Hey, Garth, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Jason, great to see you. Love the hat, buddy. We're
Hey,
both
thanks.
sporting our Jays hat. Last weekend was the home opener.
Yeah. If and we're cheering for the Jays to win. That's
We are.
what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Have you ever, before we get started, have you ever cheered for a team to lose, Garth? Have you ever been in that boat?
cheered for a team to lose.
Like your team, not the other team.
What do you mean?
Okay, so the Flames right now, I'm cheering for them to lose so they get a decent draft pick. But you know what the Flames are doing right now, Garth?
They're on a bit of a streak.
They're on an absolute tear. They
Yeah.
cannot lose. They beat all the best teams, and they're rolling, and they're having a ton of fun. I don't know if you've been catching it, but these guys are skating with joy, with purpose. They're pretty authentic out there, and they are creating a story right now with the
It's not
young up and comers.
because the Leafs are not.
Well, we're going to end on a high, and it's going to lose. We're going to lose draft picks because of it, but at least we're having fun in there. But you might be wondering, how does this tie to today's podcast?
How
Right.
does
Well,
today's podcast, Jason?
well, really, truly, I don't know that it does, Garth. And I think I'm being very authentic. I'm taking a chance, and I'm telling a little bit of a story. And I think, actually, in truth, we do cover Drew Dudley's podcast review today, and we break it into three pillars, right? We talk about being authentic, we talk about leadership practices, and then we talk about the importance of storytelling. And, maybe, just maybe, those three elements were captured in my losing story.
Also, it's interesting because losing as a strategy is something I would never really endorse, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard one in order to keep your team motivated, all of those different types of things. But strategy, I think an important point here, Jason, strategy is not always a good strategy. So keep that in mind.
All right. Well, let's get into this one, folks. I think you're going to enjoy Garth and my breakdown, and we look forward to hearing what you have to think.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Let's get to
Enjoy the show.
Lassoing leadership, sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow.
Welcome back to Lassoing Leadership. I'm Jason Rogers. I'm one of your co-hosts. I'm here today with Garth Nichols, the other one of the co-hosts of our podcast, Lassoing Leadership. And this is season 3, and we're deep into this season where we're exploring books that we've come to love, or books that we've loved for a long time. And we're getting to meet a ton of authors. And today we're in the third of our 3 podcasts about one of those books. Garth, I'm happy to be here with you today. As we record, the Jays are on a bit of a heater, and we're supporting our Jays wear. Welcome back to the show, Garth. It's good to see you. How are you doing today, man?
Yeah, always good, my friend. Always good. Yeah, the Jays. It's the opening weekend when we're recording this, and I figured there's a nice analogy here, Jason, because I've been to the last 2 games, and each one, it's kind of picking up where the Jays left off, right?
Yeah.
And for those who are big fans, like Ernie Clement wrote a letter to Jays fans. It came out right before the home opener. It was really touching and really moving. But the essence of what's been happening over the last 3 days is that the Jays and the city have been trying to recapture that experience,
Oh, yeah.
And so here's my analogy. We spent a lot of time with Drew, both in the recording, but also on either side of the recording. And he had a lot to say. And I think for me, what I took from it, because he covered a lot of ground, in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
There are a couple of things I took from it that I think are really cementing around leadership. And that is that he is drawing from his lived experience, recent and otherwise, to create a framework, a paradigm of leadership that really works for him. And he's drawing upon that experience to make every day the best day that he can.
Yeah.
And I think, like Ernie wrote about this a little, or Ernie Clement, not on a first name basis with him, but Ernie wrote a little bit about it. And I think the way that they've approached this opening day weekend extra innings, 2 walk-offs. Like, it's been pretty incredible. They're just drawing on that wealth of experience and those connections that they've made with one another.
Yeah, no, that is a really nice analogy and tie through. And I think, there are a couple things working here with the Jays and Drew here as well. And I think one of them's authenticity. When we think back to the Jays run last year, we got to know the players, right? Like authentically know the players and came to love them. And I felt like in this podcast, we spent a lot of time getting to know Drew and his background in leadership. So maybe we should just like get into that a little bit, Garth, like this role of deep authenticity in our leadership. Where are the boundaries of that authenticity? How do we live authentically, but also still keep a bit of private space for ourselves?
Yeah.
How do you think about that in your leadership day to day, Garth? Or do you just throw it all out there? Like, what's the method to your madness?
But there's the method to my madness. I think it's for me, it's always like, what are stories I can share? What can I share with the people who I lead and I work alongside, both in and outside of Kingsway College School? But what can I share with them about my life that tells them a little bit more about my values, so that there's some consistency there? Like, I value my family, I value time with them, but not just like lazing about. So I'll talk to them about how I spent, a couple of days with my son, taking him to the baseball game, because that's where we sit side by side, not across a table, and that's where we have these great conversations. And so I try to share a lot about things that will just reinforce my values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense, Garth. And I think like in our leadership, we have opportunities to share as much or as little as we want. And I think it's part of an artful activity of sharing, but not oversharing. I don't think people need to know warts and all of the time, but they probably do need to know, one, what you value, and two, where you're at today, right? Are you exhausted because you had a long night or something's going on in your life? Otherwise, are you exuberant because you're working on a project that's got you super excited? And sometimes I think about safety in workplaces, and me at least, hope that people come to us as authentically as they can. But I think we have to create safe spaces for them to be authentic at work, to share but not overshare, and to have the opportunity to be seen, heard, valued, and significant. And really one way we've started to do that at our like on our meeting agendas, for instance, is we have a check-in at the very, very top. I think a lot of people do this, and it's not mandatory. People don't always do it, but if it's a 4 or 5 person meeting, we'll have everybody's name up there. And where are you at today? 1 being, I don't want to be here, and 5 is, this is the best place in the world right now, and I'm really ready to do this. And then, sometimes provides an opportunity for people to share openly, why they're a 2 out of 5 and what puts them there. And if they don't want to share in that way, I think it's just a nice subtle reminder that somebody might not be at their best that day. And I think that's as authentic as they care to be in that moment.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about, over the past couple of dozens of episodes, really, just about that concept of authenticity and communication too, right? And I don't think that we want to be overly optimistic and positive. Like, that can actually backfire on us. But to be real, in the sense that to share that we have, as leaders, have ups and downs. But I think what Drew does really well is he says, this is how I've taken my downs, this is how I've taken the challenges, and really created opportunities out of them, and really created a paradigm of how to understand that, every day I'm just trying to be the best I can today. And I think that was a real through moment for me. But this stuff, and you and I've talked about this before, Jason, we have these moments together on this podcast, and these are our moments to reflect. These are our moments to talk a little bit about leadership. And that's a signal to us, right? It's a reinforcement to us. And I think that the concept of reflection is really brought out in Drew's work too. Yes. And I was wondering, like, what did you make of his sort of, we called it kind of an experiment. It was really like an assignment for his students in his leadership class, which was, ask yourself these critical questions, and you have to ask them at the end of the day. How have I made space for people to feel safe? How have I made space for people to share, for people to be their authentic selves today? You prep yourself in the morning. You look at the questions in the morning, but then you answer them at night. Do you have any sort of reflective practices like that, Jason?
Well, first of all, I think it's a really, really nice kind of bookend exercise, which I think creates, parameters on your day and allows you to put part of your leadership day away. And I think that's a big part of sustaining ourselves psychologically during difficult times, whether you're in leadership or you're teaching or you're a parent, is just finding ways to compartmentalize safely some of the challenges that we face day to day to day. And, I think I just stumbled upon mine, honestly, Garth, my strategy, and it's just good note taking. I think that absolutely creates psychological safety for me. One, that I've captured the moment, the day, the whatever the case is. And two, it's there if I need to go back to it. And three, I can actually forget about it. My cognitive load goes way down in that moment because it gives me permission to not actually think about it. And so, I think I've told the story before, but I'll tell parents that I likely a week from now, I'm not going to remember that all of the details of the incident that we were going through with their child, say the child's in trouble, and just know that I see their child as, the fully formed human being that they are, but I'm not carrying these specific incidents with me, because truly that stuff does leave my brain pretty quickly once the notes are taken and I'm ready to move on. So I think it creates a lot of psychological safety for myself in leadership. So that would be a strategy not dissimilar to what, I think Drew is encouraging his students to do as he told that story.
Nice. I think for me, I really enjoy reflecting with others. So we had this really funny sort of conflagration of events where we were doing a tabletop exercise, a risk exercise as a leadership team. And we were moving through that, and it was going really well, and people were responding. We were using the playbook really, really well. And as we were drawing that to a close, an actual, not life-threatening or anything along those lines, but something happened that required all hands on deck. And it was like, perfect, let's move, and we were working through it. And about, 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, it was resolved. And people were like, woo, that was important. I guess we're getting back to work. And I said, whoa, hold on a second.
Mm-hmm.
What went well? How did it go well? What might we improve upon? In that moment, and it took about 8 minutes, right? But in that moment, and still we were able to write it all down, but to have that group reflection whenever you can. And I think leaders, don't be shy to actually call people into your reflective process and say, this is what I'm taking from it. Are you taking that from it too? Or what can you add to my understanding of the event? And getting that sort of, not 360, but that broader perspective and viewpoint is, I think, really critical.
So I think, when we think about this podcast, right, we've got Drew's attention to authenticity, right? His orientation to this kind of book ending exercise, or trying to find our own ways to manage these instances. So we've got those two. And the last one that I think I would bring forward as a part of Drew's wisdom and the experience we had with him on the podcast was, storytelling, right? The importance of storytelling. So I think these are the three pillars of Drew's talk on our podcast last week. And Garth, how much storytelling do you think is enough storytelling? Like, where do you use storytelling? Why is it such an important leadership tool to bring to the front?
Yeah, he did talk about his most, I think, famous story, which is the lollipop moment. But I like to tell stories. I like to talk to my colleagues and how was your weekend? I'll usually crystallize the weekend into a story, something along those lines. Again, something that reflects my values, or something that tells them a little bit more about how I find joy in the world. And I certainly enjoy hearing stories as well, because they're learnings, right? And so I don't think there's ever a moment to not welcome a story. We are all stories. And so, yeah, I don't think there's any, unless a story is distracting you from anything that's urgent, or it's taking you away from business at hand. but I really enjoy those like slow walking moments, which I adopted from you. Those slow walking moments where people can come up and tell stories about kids in their classroom, or the field trip that they did, or the cross campus initiatives that they've been working on, or something that happened on their weekend. I truly value those moments.
There's a bunch of really good books on storytelling, but as you're talking, Garth, I'm thinking about a book called Made to Stick by the
Yeah,
Heath brothers.
yeah, Heath Brothers. Yeah.
It's a book, it's probably 20 years old now, maybe even older than that. And it is so good because it takes us through the parts of an impactful story, which allow them to stick with us, right? And I remember them talking about, familiarity, the art of surprise, and some kind of meaningful resolution that comes out of it. And I think if we learn how to tell stories well, they do become stickier, like the lollipop story, if you will. And they become those enduring learnings that we can lean back on when we need them most, right? We remember what that meant as a part of Drew's story. And if we become good storytellers or great storytellers, then I think your leadership will only thrive. And I think the art of storytelling is something in leadership is worthy of attention. And
Yeah.
that book, Made to Stick, is really a great playbook for it.
Yeah, and there's an interesting add-on here too, like an extension of that, which is the more people know you and who you are, the less surprised they're going to be in those difficult moments, right? If you're telling the right stories, I shouldn't say right stories, but if you're telling the stories that really reflect your values, I think you are telling these stories so that when something comes up and you have to be more directive, or you are, leading through change, these are the stories that are building up cultural capacity and understanding in who you are. And so you can tell the story of change. You can tell the story of the difficult moment, and people have a better sense, a deeper sense of who you are, which builds trust. Right? That relational trust is so important. And I felt like, Jason, at the end of that conversation, Drew had shared a lot. And I felt like I knew him that much more, like that much
Right.
deeper. And so, I did take some time over the weekend to like go back and flip through that book. I was like, wow, that story now resonates a little bit more, knowing all the challenges that he has been going through, been diagnosed with, but also it's like quite inspiring to hear him talk openly about that. And this is my strategy because I've got ADHD. This is my strategy here. This is my strategy there. And I think that just opens us up to trusting him that little bit more.
So I think, in summary, Garth, those are the pillars of Drew and his podcast and his book and his leadership, right? Is authenticity. I think leadership self-care is how I would typify that middle portion. And then great storytelling to bring the whole picture to light. And I think if, listeners and leaders and those folks out there really get your arms around those three pillars, I think it's a great framework for leadership as a whole. So I'm very thankful to Drew for taking the time and really, in his way, taking us through those three fairly concise pillars to the leadership.
Yeah. And I would also point readers, if they haven't already got the book, there is an amazing digital artifact of it, and that is a list of values and then questions and understandings of each of those values. So if you are a values-based leader, we all are in some way, but if you want values to be a little bit more than just a list, these descriptors and questions that go with them they're leadership gold.
Okay. Now I hate to have to pivot away from Drew because I've loved our time with him.
Yeah.
But I want to tease the next triad, Garth. Is it okay if I jump in?
Yeah, go for it, man. Exciting.
This is a big one. All of these have been big ones, but this is a big one as well. We've got Jennifer Wallace in the next triad. She is the author of Never Enough as well as Mattering. And she's really kind of blowing up all over the place. She recently took the main stage at the TED event in Vancouver and followed up that with a keynote appearance at South by Southwest just last month. And she's on our show. She's also talked to Oprah and Reese Witherspoon on their podcast. And she made a little bit of time for us. Well, we might have to reciprocate and have Oprah or Reese onto our podcast as well.
We're only one person away.
We're
Yeah,
only one person away.
it's going to be fantastic. Her two books, are just around education, around leadership. I mean, they are must reads, and I know we say that a lot, but I think these are two areas that are really where she captures just such important takeaways for leaders, whether you are in education or not. This concept of mattering, and we'll talk a little bit about how it connects to Zach Mercurio, but also this concept of like never enough, and the students that we're teaching and the students that are being hired into the workforce now in the immediate future. It's just so valuable to have that deeper understanding.
Yeah, and it's people who know me well are not going to be surprised about what I say next. But I think, there have been a couple really big ideas in education that have come through in the last decade or 15 years. One of them being growth mindset by Carol Dweck. I think changed the game, changed the way we thought about. Another one, I'd love to have a guy named Todd Rose on the podcast at some point. This idea of end of average is huge. And then honestly, I think mattering is one of those absolutely massive ideas that's emerging and will stick around for the next 10 or 15 years as we deeply contemplate what it means to not only be seen, heard, and valued, but also feel significant in our environments, whether it's at work or at school. And so wow, we got Jennifer coming in a couple weeks.
Yeah, and I think too these two books are hitting just at the right time as generative AI is really demanding questions of us as leaders, as educators, and also demanding more of our students in terms of differentiating themselves in an era of generative AI. How do you as a student make sure that you are allowing people to matter in your life, that you are building that skill for yourself? So yeah, here we go. It's exciting.
You got it. Okay. Listeners, tune in for the next few podcasts. You're in for a real treat. But until next time, we all hope you keep reading and leading the Lasso way.
Beauty.
Garth, thanks for the chat today. Yeah.
Thanks, listeners.
Grab your coffee, grab your seat. It's time to learn, it's time to meet. Garth and Jason setting the tone. Leadership lessons to take back home. Lassoing leadership sharp and true. Beard's Book Club got wisdom for you. Turn the pages, let the stories flow. Unpacking lessons as we grow. Keep leading the lasso way. Together we'll grow stronger every day. So plug in your headphones and let's start the